Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for another Reloading Chat. And today I want to talk to you guys about something that seems to really confuse leftists. And they have these ideas that, how could so many people, how could so many millions and millions of people in our country be so ignorant as to support Trump? And what makes him think that he can make these outlandish statements? Who are these people that follow him and believe this stuff who are going to vote for him? Well, good question. And this goes back to my point historically about the homogenization of thought inside inner cities. And again, I've done plenty of videos explaining this inner city thing. So if you don't understand what that means, or if you think it has any racial connotation in any way, you are too ignorant to be on this channel. Actually, no, you need to stick around and educate yourself because it has to do with densely packed population centers. That's what inner city means. And this idea that all the people who do this must be ignorant, or who believe these things. And how could he say something so outlandish, all these things that he says? And what they don't grasp, almost 50%, maybe more than 50% of the country agrees with what he's saying. So the question in those people's mind is, they just don't understand. And that comes down to the fact of what I've said in the past about inside the inner cities, there's a homogenization of belief, a homogenization of thought. There's a herd-like mentality that has to exist to maintain peace in dense population centers. I mean, in New York City, with that many people around you, or Boston, or Los Angeles, other than in little certain pockets maybe in those communities, everyone tends to have similar thoughts. And everyone's like, no, we don't. I'm like, yeah, you compare yourself to the rest of the country, you do. Meaning you all share basic social and political beliefs. Even though you have diversity, there is not diversity of thought or what is socially acceptable. You have different rules, and you have to, again, to maintain that peace. And to all of you, it just seems impossible that people could say the things that Trump says because you don't have diversity of opinion and social thought generally to the same degree that lower population density centers do. The other problem you have is that what he says is so different from what you see on the media or most politicians saying is because of the same thing. Where are all major media outlets located? In dense population centers. All of the reporters who report have beliefs that are similar to that of everyone around them also, because they live in and function inside dense population centers in the inner cities. And that is also the point I always make, that everyone who doesn't live in those centers, which actually comprises over 50% of the people of this entire nation, don't have a voice. They don't have a voice in the media, and they feel disenfranchised by both parties by the voting process. And what you actually have, what Trump has done as a strategy, is not ostracize himself. What he's done is he's listened and gone and talked to for quite some time all the people who are part of the half of the country that feels like they have no voice. And he looks at what are they arguing for? What do they want? It's actually not they, it's we, because I'm in that group. What do we want to see? What policies are upset us about the way our government is run that we feel we have no voice about? And his entire platform, everything that he runs on is based off of interviews with the people who don't have a voice because they're not the dominant thought inside the dense population centers that get the most voice with politicians, as they listen to them the most, because that's where they do most of their campaigning. And that is where all of your news outlets come from, all of them. So that is all you hear all day long from both parties, not just the Democrats, but both parties technically, is the voice of people from dense population centers. Even though they comprise only a segment of the population, it's because our landmass is so massive. But the people who you actually need to make everything run, who make all of your food, who ship all of your food, all the things that you need around the country, don't live in those regions. Well, those people haven't had a voice in a very long time. And they're very, very different in thought process and concerns from what is presented on TV in the newspapers every single day. And Trump is giving those people a voice. And people say, well, they're ignorant. They're ignorant. No, honestly, you go to rural areas or even suburban areas, either one could be represented by Trump. In my experience so far, that's where your representation is. They're not ignorant. They have the same level of education, federal education, that everyone else does up through high school. You have the same number of degrees from college, the same number of advanced degrees. I know PhDs who support Trump, plenty of PhDs who support Trump. There are brain surgeons who support Trump. So are we now saying that brain surgeons and researchers in biomedical science are ignorant? And how many of you out there are even qualified to call those people ignorant? Very, very few. So it's not a question of ignorance, it's a question of the majority of the people have been disenfranchised from having a voice in the political or media system because of the fact that they're spread out further over the country. And also, again, because to people who live in those regions, the ideas that come out of homogenized, densely populated areas don't sound like that good ideas to them. They look at them and go, well, that's not in our best interest, the way people from New York City think. Or maybe even deep inside Houston, inside the loop. Because I live out of the suburbs of there. So way outside of that. Or in Los Angeles or Boston or Chicago or Detroit. These ideas don't sound very good to people who don't live in those sort of areas. They're like, that's not in our best interest. These policies and ideas aren't. And that's all that you see on the news. And so therefore, what you're seeing is that all these people living all over the rest of the country, which comprises over 90% of the landmass and 50% of the population or more, are saying all of these ideas that these people have come up with and they implement are terrible ideas. We don't like them. So you're not necessarily seeing homogeny of thought. You're just seeing most people in those regions are realizing that these policies are not in their best interest. These are bad ideas from our perspective. Maybe not from the perspective of people living in those areas, clearly not, or they wouldn't support them. And since you have a long list of those, and everyone is looking at them from those areas going, no, I don't like this at all. This doesn't sound right. We need to do away with this, this, and this. And they're all agreeing because they can all tell that those are policies that don't help them, that hurt them. Not useful to them. And Trump is addressing those concerns. And this is where it works both ways. Just like people from those areas look again at the inner cities, these homogenized, herd-like mentality and hive mind that tends to come out of these regions, they're looking at them and saying, well, this stuff doesn't help us. This stuff is crazy. Everything that the media says is crazy, and that the White House says their policy, this stuff's ridiculous. It's ignorant. So therefore, people who see those ideas who are coming from the other mindset are thinking that their ideas are pretty good. This is good stuff. This creates great harmony in our nation. This is what we need. Then see the other side saying the opposite and say, well, they just must be ignorant. This is insane. Who would dare say these things? Because you're not used to anyone saying differently. Even though half the country does every day. But the two sides are disconnected by lifestyle, by social differences, completely different ways of life. And it kind of comes to the point of the way that our nation is laid out now. We are not one nation anymore. The concerns of this massive country can't be fairly distributed by federal government any longer. Our different subcultures are too diverse. Our social needs, our ideas are now too diverse. And it's largely due to the difference in lifestyle based upon the type of population centers we have. the massive differences we have in population density. Because as a nation, we have a fairly low population density. However, we have deep population densities in inner cities. So it gives us two very distinct types of ideas and thought processes and ways of life. And they're incompatible when it comes to writing laws and rules and policies to govern both. Which is why I've been saying lately a decentralization of power and more power being put into local hands will give better policies and better ways of life that give better opportunity, freedom, and happiness than we can do with the centralization of power that we've seen become stronger and stronger over the years. And that is why two people coming from the other end, who again are the people who run all the media, work in all the media, that they can't understand why Americans or other Americans would back someone like Trump in the things that he says. They're not backing Trump in the things that he says. Trump is repeating the things that we're all saying. He's just repeating our concerns. Nothing more. And that's why he gets such an overwhelming, massive support. He's the first candidate to come talk to all the people who feel disenfranchised from the system and from media and from government, and to ask them what they want. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.